So good afternoon to all of you, and thank you for coming. The way I wanted, what I wanted to do today with a panel was to I'll talk for a couple of minutes and then I'll turn it over to them. I'll ask each panelist to give a couple of minutes introduction to their firm. We're very fortunate today to have four very experienced investors in big data with firms that have been investing in this area for a while. I have a few questions that I will use to warm up the crowd, as they say, and then we'll turn it over to you. If you have questions, we'll be very eager to respond to them. If not, I have some more questions and we'll keep going. So every 20 minutes or so, I'll see whether you have questions to go with. So why do we have this panel? So big data has captured the imagination of VCs in the same way that has captured the imagination of each one of you in this room for a variety of reasons. And today we have several hundreds of startups that have been funded by at least institutional money, venture money. This does not count the maybe several hundreds or maybe even thousands of companies that have been funded by other sources. We see a lot of new ideas. In the last couple of years in particular, we're seeing a lot of new ideas that are coming forward. Many of them may not warrant too much attention from an institutional investor, but many do. And I thought it would be important for us to talk about some of these comments. Let me tell you a couple of things about my firm. As Usama said, I've been an investor for several years, and last year, in fact, I started a new firm with a couple of additional partners, and we focus exclusively on big data startups, revenue generating startups. The unique model that we use is that we work a lot with corporations to understand the problems that they're trying to address through data, and then we identify startups that most of the times could address this problem. But the key point is that we're looking for companies with strong IP and that are developing either horizontal or vertical applications. So, Greg, let me turn it over to you now and chat a little bit.
Sure. So I'm the founder of Costanoa Venture Capital, which I started in 2012. I spent another 13 years before that at Sutter Hill Ventures, and before that was the first product manager at Netscape, where I built the suite of server software and wrote the first business plan and shipped our first products and the like. We are a Series A and seed focused firm, focused entirely on enterprise applications and infrastructure. We frequently refer to it as data-driven applications and infrastructure. Is that better? Thank you. When we first launched the firm, the original blog post was what the blank is applied big data. So I think this notion that says what are the applications, how do you use it, how do you source data, how do you build unique and proprietary algorithms around a specific application, but also and as Evangelos said, they can be verticals, they can be functionals, they can be horizontals. They sometimes include systems level problems, so which might include security or may include data center management or other things. But we're now a team of four investment professionals based out of Palo Alto and investing all over the country.
Hi, my name is Tim Guleri. I'm a partner with Sierra Ventures, and I want to congratulate Evangelos for pulling this crew of characters together. We invest in the same space, but I haven't seen Matt and Mark and Greg for a long time, so thank you for doing that. So my firm's, early stage venture capital. We do seed, Series A, and Series B. We have been in business for 33 years, and are investing our 11th fund. And our orientation is very much, sort of finding a real business problem and applying technology and a different business model to scaling the business, which is the way we come at it. Because our collective experiences will tell you, as we get into the stories of scaling businesses, that technology alone doesn't get you to the promised land. It's got to be a combination of technology plus finding the right pain point and deploying a business model against that really sort of can get you to build a big company. And I was an entrepreneur before becoming a VC. Evangelos remembers this well. Back in 2002 is when I joined Sierra, so almost 14, 15 years there. And I built two companies before that, a company called Scopus Technology that was in the CRM space, took it public in 95. Did a company called Octane, where I was CEO and founder and ran that for about 5 years. That was a large exit to another public company. And the reason I mentioned those stories to you is because our orientation towards investing in these early stage ventures is very sort of practical. And we love the science, but we try not to fall in love with the science, if you know what I mean. And I look forward to the discussion this afternoon.
See if I can do this without electrocuting myself on the water here. My name is Matt Ocko. I am the co-founder and co-managing partner of a firm called Data Collective, colloquially known as DCVC. That's Delta Charlie Victor Charlie for those of you folks with military or aviation backgrounds. Since I'm in a stats-centric audience, maybe I'll focus on some stats. We've been doing this for over 20 years. As a team together, we're on our 7th fund. We manage just shy of $1 billion. We've created about $40 billion of net outcomes in our careers, both as entrepreneurs and mostly as investors. So that shows that we're either okay investors and bad entrepreneurs, or vice versa. I'm not sure which. And we bat about 800. So that means in just shy of 25 years of doing this, fewer than 20% of our companies have failed to return. So that's relatively unusual in the venture industry, and we do it because we ourselves are data-driven. We like to invest in stuff that's very, very difficult, that has a high-order algorithmic advantage, that ideally uses lots of data, the more proprietary the better, and large-scale compute to substitute for CapEx or OpEx in huge industries and thereby transform them. So we're not necessarily very sector-driven. We've done stuff as far afield as computational biology and synthetic biology, as well as stuff that would seem like very traditional enterprise systems. So I like to joke that as a defrocked physicist that who has been coding, well, actually since the 1970s, it's a little scary. I remember when neural networks were actually called perceptrons. I like to joke that my job consists of wandering around finding people much smarter than I am and my partners who will deign to let us invest in them and help them build our companies. So today I'm in the right place, thanks to Evangelos.
Thanks, Matt. Evangelos, I also would like to thank you for inviting all of us here. It's a great group of panelists to be with. We, like I think the others on this panel, believe that we've entered into a whole new era of information technology computing, which is this era of intelligence, the era that is after cloud computing. And with that, we have chosen to invest only in the areas where you add data to software to give that software value. We believe that cloud software is already becoming commodity, pure workflow cloud software. So we're investing in intelligence, we're investing only in enterprise, and we're investing in early stage, actually seed rounds, the rounds that follow the angels and micro VCs and come before the Series A's. We've made 16 investments so far, and we started the fund in 2013. One of my colleagues, Guleri, is here, so afterwards, if you can't find me, please look for her. And in terms of background, I had the honor of being at another venture fund, Hummer Winblad, for 23 years, which was the first fund that only invested in software, and through 6 funds there. Before that, was on the founding team of the Spark Station at Sun Microsystems, and today have the honor of sitting on the board of trustees at MIT and also on something called PCAST, which is the President's Council of Advisors in Science and Technology.
So, Mark, let's stay with you. When we talk about startups working on big data, what areas do you include under this broad theme?
So it's interesting. So another venture capitalist, Matt Turk, wrote a blog post earlier this year that says, "Is big data still a thing?" And I think that we have gone through this metamorphosis very quickly in the last 5 years, where we've gone from big data to business analytics, this whole idea now of real-time and predictive business analytics, but now to intelligence. Again, this idea that software itself has become commodity, but when you add data, particularly crowdsourced data, to that software, then you can give that software value. And we think that is the cornerstone of where we are today. And so from that, it's a huge opportunity. We think every line of business in the enterprise is going to change. Sales, marketing, HR, they're all going to have new systems put in place on top of the systems that they had to be able to compete. Security is going to change, be able to keep up with it. The Internet of Things, obviously, is a huge area of this era. And then vertical sectors, where the areas that were data starved before that now have data available to it for the first time. And that creates an opportunity for venture capitalists that never existed. You know, areas, and Matt spoke a little bit about this, whether agriculture or retail or automotive, medical. I mean, it's just endless number of vertical areas that are now large enough for us to get returns on that wasn't true before. We think in terms of the next wave, there's going to be some really interesting areas where you bring silos together. So, for example, we're just at the early innings of investing in the recreation of US cities. And that requires you to not just bring data and sensors together, but it requires transportation, energy, water, housing, and how that is going to transform is going to make some really interesting investment opportunities. And then the last one I would say as part of this is that just as software engineers didn't have tools available to them and they were viewed as some of the most important people in the organization 25 years ago, that created a whole industry of the tooling and platforms underneath that. Data scientists are in that position today. And so there's a whole opportunity for the new platforms for data science, and I think that's an opportunity for startups as well.
Anybody? Okay, go ahead, man.
Yeah, since these panels love conflict, I'm going to skip partially to a later question that Evangelos had asked us to think about, which is, what don't you invest in? So I'm actually terrified of the stuff that Mark has expertise in, which is programming tools and platforms. We do a little of it as a firm. We've done some of it traditionally, mostly just to stay in touch, again, with people smarter than we are. But it is very, very difficult to pull off. It's kind of like being a consumer investor, and I don't think the AI exists on a planet that can tell what a teenage girl or teenage boy in Ohio is going to consider entertaining 3 years from now. So it's a very high bar to be investing in tooling for other industries. The one exception to that, I would say, is that there's still the holy grail out there in some of these tools categories, but it's AI or ML driven. So having a literal Deus Ex Machina, having a literal ghost in the machine that is transformative for an engineer or data scientist's daily work is the kind of differentiation that I think is necessary to be investing in that category. And we've really only seen that in 1 or 2 companies. That being said, Mark routinely surprised naysayers during the last 25 years of his career, so you could consider this just my subtly egging him on to improve the tools that I have to work with.
Yeah, I'll maybe just add to a theme that maybe Mark touched on earlier, which is what we are seeing, back to the earlier comment I'd made around verticalization, that so we have a panel of 80 CIOs at Sierra because we do so much of work in IT-oriented stuff. And we typically, before we are forming a thesis or figuring out whether we want to invest in a company, we'll ping the system and ask them, hey, what do you think about this? And we get, if we get a response from 5-7 of them that says, big hair and fire problem, let's go solve it, or I'd love to see the company, it gives us a sense of how the market will react. And what I've been finding, the two trends that have been very, very dominant, and might be obvious to you, but I just wanted to state it, is A, that there's been an increased frequency of companies showing up at our doorsteps that are vertical, looking for vertically oriented solutions to the specific problem. So it could be insurance tech, it could be financial services, it could be what have you, right? So they take a very, very vertical orientation, and they're looking for those companies that have the domain in which to which they've applied AI or sort of predictive models or techniques that hover above the basic infrastructure that we just talked about. That's point number one. The second is, which has happened more dominantly in the last 9 months, is data and the syndication of data to create these what I'll call verticalized data-centric applications is the other trend that we're seeing, again, biovertical. And I think those two in combination are, if you look for like what's different between, say, 2012 to 2016, I think 12 and 11 was still the sort of the world of horizontal platforms, right? These efficiencies that Matt was talking about. And now you're sort of starting to see this trend about these data-centric, vertical-centric applications, and there seem to be, there's a lot of interest and a lot of verticals with a lot of money, a lot of pain, looking for solutions in these particular markets.
All right, so now I'm going to play Matt Ocko's role, which is really an unusual role reversal, and drop the firebomb.
Is everybody getting this on video?
Which is basically ignore everything that was just said, because the current themes in the venture capital industry have nothing to do with what you should be doing, which companies you should start, and which problems you can solve. So the common wisdom, and I'm including myself in this category, but the common wisdom about what's happening and what's hot and what's on TechCrunch is literally no more relevant to your lives than watching HBO's Silicon Valley. And the question is, attach yourself to problems of significance and use the amazing tools and data that is available today to go solve them, and everything else will be okay.
Wait a minute. You're telling me I'm not getting middle out compression?
I think we've, not only have we reached peak big data, but we've reached peak machine learning, right? When the Chicago Tribune renames itself Tronc and declares that it is reinventing the company around machine learning and artificial intelligence, and that happened 2 months ago, then we know that we're, it's all in the rear view mirror. So the thing that I'd say, just to finish up my little rant here, is that the thing that is, we were all on some level investing in big data and big data applications 10 years ago, right? And so the question is, there was less data available. Now there's more. It's bigger. The algorithms are better, right? The machine learning and the deep learning applied on top of it is much better. That means you can go solve problems which before were unsolvable or which used to be small and are now big. So when Andreessen Horowitz started 7 years ago, they said we absolutely will not do vertical applications. It's the one thing we absolutely won't do. Well, many of the rest of us are here doing an awful lot of vertical software. Those problems are plenty big, and we'd be happy to talk to you.
So I want to make a comment, and then I want to come back to you, Greg. As Usama said, I've been working in industry for a number of years, and recently I've started reconnecting with industry a lot more than I did in the first 15 years of my venture career. And I would say that for the first time, I'm starting to see CEO, chief strategy officer, chief digital officer level executives coming to the realization that data will be a key ingredient to the strategic problems they have for the corporation. This is not about, oh, give me a better predictive model to do X. This is about how do I monetize this part of my business, right? Or how do I give growth to my, you know, to my division, you know? So very, very key problem. So this is kind of to go along with what you guys were saying. So Greg, if I were to stay with you for a minute, where are you seeing then, particularly enterprise, but also to the degree that you want to venture on consumer as well, where do you see the areas going? I mean, what do you see as big data evolving to, given what you just said?
Well, so I think that you know, so we have companies in a variety of verticals and some functionals that are you know, that are trying to prevent fraud. In one case, at Guardian Analytics, to make data more discoverable, usable, understandable, governable, which is one that I share with Matt at Elation. But I think, to me, the interesting question, and several of us have alluded to it, is how do you actually tie pieces together to create a really valuable product and business system? And to me, you know, that formula is half about data and half about algorithms and machine learning. The data part, lots of people are going out and working on commonly accessible data sources that are widely available, didn't used to be. So it's okay to aggregate data, but you also have to curate it, and eventually you have to originate it. And that can be systems originating it, or it can be crowdsourced. Generally, I think there's as much power in data as there is in algorithms, and it's a lot harder to stay ahead in algorithms over a 10-year time horizon than it is in creating a self-feeding data ecosystem. And then, to me, it's got to be attached to a really important business problem that is high value to the users, and it can be transformative for a business, for a function. There's certainly, you know, sales and marketing is an area where there is a ton of data and there is a complete transformation. So anyone that does business-to-business marketing in the way that they did 10 and 15 years ago will be out of business, right? So it's going through very rapid transformation, but boy, it's hyper competitive and people are fighting over the same data sources. So to me, when we, you know, when we look at you know, we don't start out, for the most part, with, you know, there are people who are thematic investors and who I think are great thematic investors. My friends at the Foundry Group usually start a fund and they say, we invest in these 3 themes and only these 3 themes. I've never thought I was smart enough to do that, honestly. I'm hoping that you guys do that. But we're awfully good at validating business problem, how much it matters to end users, how you can reach them, how much they're willing to pay for it, how many of them there are, the technical stack that supports it, the areas of differentiation. And that's the way we'll go think about and attack that business problem. And I found myself way better at working that sort of bottoms up than trying to articulate tops down. This is, you know, this is the year of agriculture. Hell, I don't know. I thought 1999 was the year of agriculture and I lost all my money. Actually, I got back 14 cents on the dollar, to be clear.
Mark, go ahead.
Yeah, I think to your question, Evangelos, every line of business now is seeing that they have to have some sort of system engagement that's creating data that's sitting on top of their existing system of record because it's increasing their revenue. So if you take a simple example of sales, so we invested in a company called Inside Sales. They now have 100 billion records of data. They're a sales acceleration platform. They sit on top of Salesforce. So of 80,000 sales reps that use that, of that 100 billion records and adding 5 billion a month, they can deduce what time of day you should contact people, whether you should call them or email them, how you should follow up with them. To their customers, traditionally, they haven't looked at any of that, but they've seen they've increased their sales by 30% by basically getting the access to all that data that's crowdsourced across customers, same way Google does. So you'll see these sort of Google techniques that'll come through every line of business, create a system of engagement, and that system of engagement will create a lot of value for these companies.
Yeah, I'll actually just add to what Mark said, just sort of further up the funnel. And I guess my example is just to maybe illustrate the fact that there is a lot of unlocked value in traditionally sort of sectors in which enterprise spend a lot of money that could be rethought. So one really good indication of that is if you look for any business that's spending a lot of money in heads, as in outsourced call centers or telesales guys or gals or lead generation, which is the top of the funnel activity. Those are classic examples of old sort of business models that can be reinvented on the backs of excellent data, data hygiene, machine learning, and creating these new avenues of value. So my example is what Mark just said, right up the funnel in an enterprise. If you think about anybody who goes to a sales guy or VP of sales that's trying to run a quarter and produce $10, $15 million a quarter, all of them, all public companies spend anywhere from $3 to $30 million on lead sources. So they'll buy leads from one list, they'll buy another lead source from another list, they'll munch them together. Some guy will get on the phone and pound the phone, try to see if this is actually a person or Mickey Mouse, right? And then try to shove it down the line to the salesperson. When I was running my company back in 1995, this was the state of the art. And in 90% of the enterprises today, this is still the state of the art when you think about lead generation at the top of the funnel. And that's an example of an area which is staring, I think, the market in the face. And there's many, many examples like that where you can take modern techniques in data management, machine learning, and create a lot of value. So we made an investment, a team came out of Berkeley called Lead Genius. And this is a company that now has Google as customers, Box, eBay, all the enterprises that deal with that scale of qualified lead production and are trying to move to a more enlightened stack, which takes sort of advantage of all the techniques that are available and have been available just in the last 3 years. Because processing data at scale and then having machine learning models that actually give you a closed loop on how to increase the score and the efficacy of that particular lead has only become available in the last 3 years. And I think that sales effectiveness domain is one example of a horizontal enterprise process, different than the vertical example that Greg was talking about, where there's a lot of money, where you can actually unlock a lot of value and re-enter the market with a very interesting company. So there are many examples like that which folks in this room can uncover.
Any questions from the audience? Okay. Matt, what would you consider as table stakes these days for big data?
Oh boy.
I mean, since you talk about real hard IP.
I appreciate that my colleagues are able to invest in stuff like sales and marketing, just like Mark has been able across the course of his career to identify that one kind of epiphanic tools company. And Mark, you should give examples of some of the stuff that you've nailed, because also there's in the same way that there are 10x and 100x algorithms people in a given vertical in venture capital, there are 10x and 100x people, whether it's in tools or consumers or verticals like sales and marketing. Again, most of what my colleagues just talks about scares the bejesus out of me, because I see 30 or 40 companies in that space. We saw 12 competitors to Lead Genius before and after Tim had the courage to fund them. And likewise for everything in sales and marketing. We have an existential horror of investing in very bright, very well-meaning, very hardworking people who are the 14th Wi-Fi chip company, the 25th optical router company, the 36th SQL database company in 1986. And that's how you lose money as a venture capitalist, unless you have the magic ability to peer through the fog through some combination of hard data and magic, intuition, I don't know. I'm not sure I have that intuition, so I would describe myself and my colleagues as highly intelligent cowards. We want a safety blanket. And the safety blanket that we want is crushing economic advantage, an absolute must-have. People will get fired. Buildings will crumble. People will frickin' die if you don't use our product. And you know what? If you have that, you get paid for it. And the people who sacrifice their lives for 7 or 9 or 11 years in a startup get money that they get to give their families, and we make money for our limited partners, many of whom literally are feeding widows and orphans. And having that crushing advantage is the only way I sleep at night. Well, you can have crushing advantage by spending $1 billion developing a new chip. That's kind of a big swing for venture capital. So it has to be software. All right, if you're doing software, how do you get an advantage? Well, to Greg's point, you can create a data advantage. And Greg has an interesting point that data may supersede algorithms, but data takes a long time to collect, during which your competitors are simply lying through their teeth. Hey, Bob from Dishonest Corp here. We have all the same data as Greg's company. We actually don't. We're sociopathic liars, but now we've triggered an enterprise bake-off that takes Greg's company a year and a lot of money to survive. All right. So we need algorithms and data. And so we look at whether somebody has a combination of an algorithm and accreted data that provides a specific set of Fortune 1000 and sometimes government customers such a crippling advantage. And when I say crippling advantage, they literally can do something that was absolutely impossible, that they will pay an asymptotic amount of money for over and over and over again on a recurring revenue basis. So what are some examples of that? Well, we have a company called Zymergen that's out in the press, but still relatively stealthy. It's in the computational biology space that can pull 5 years and $1 to $3 billion out of the development and production of specialty chemicals like ballistic nylon for a company like DuPont. And I've heard from people who are relatively highly placed that the otherwise very excellent female CEO of DuPont would still have her job if they'd cut a deal with Zymergen in time. That's the kind of advantage we have. What's the algorithmic advantage? Well, they're literally solving a search space problem, not an exaggeration, happy to show you the math, 1 million times harder than the Go search space problem in AlphaGo. That's the kind of table stakes that we have to have, because I cheerfully confess I'm not that good at peering through the fog to see that one company in a mix of 12 or 13 to make the decision. Do we guess wrong sometimes? Sure. But usually what we're guessing wrong about is the enterprise customer's willingness to admit how screwed they are, not about the actual company's advantage. Did I address your question, Evangelos?
I was also glad that we are recording, because I thought that was a great show.
Also, I just want to give Greg cannon fodder to come back at me later.
But with that type of presentation. Anyway, Mark, I wanted to ask you, as you said, alluded to earlier, there are entrepreneurs these days have many financing options. And I wanted to ask you for what do you advise entrepreneurs in terms of how to go about financing their companies based on what stage their thinking is?
Well, I think actually this intelligence era is starting to change the financing steps that we saw at the end of the cloud computing era. You know, what happened in the last 10 years is that cloud computing made it very inexpensive to build a minimal viable product, and open source as well made it very inexpensive. So now you can build a company that's effectively on angel money or micro VC money and get to a product and get some early customers. And that was enough before to attract a large Series A investment to move up marketing and sales. But now with this notion that you need to add intelligence to that too, it's adding another complexion, because you can get to that minimal viable product. And so on that seed round, on that angel round, if you can get to minimal viable product, if you can generate some data, you can get some early customers, typically very small customers, because that's who you can probably attract at that point. You can start to get your algorithms going. You start to show that there's a promise of that. At that point, rather you don't have enough to go to the large Series A players, but you really now need that seed round, which I think is becoming the new round of this era. So in that round, what you need to do is effectively move from founders, engineers, collecting data and being very tactical to including data science, including machine learning models, getting strategic insights, moving up your positioning, getting some sales and marketing, and moving to a larger set of customers. And that's what you can do on that seed round. So that puts you in position to raise that larger Series A today, which you can't do and you couldn't do before in this era. So I think that's your staging. And that's opened up this whole opportunity for what we'll call this $3 to $5 million funding round that now is labeled as seed, that in an old era, we call it Series A Classic, the old Series A.
Right. Tim, any comments from your side?
No, I think that's a good jump-off point. The way I think about this in the last, again, 5 years is the context you guys should be looking at, which is there was so much of venture capital money flowing in any sector, let alone big data and analytics, that in any sector you talk about, this is the earlier point that Matt had talked about, that there are 5 or 7 companies that are in that particular space, and they'll raise your hand. So I think the key to think through when you're thinking about how much money to raise and then who to raise it from is, every firm has a sort of a different worldview on what they do when they get into a seed deal or a Series A deal. And I think you as entrepreneurs should take the time to figure out what that is, because they will come with that, picnic basket to the picnic, right? The way we think about that at Sierra is basically the 4 things that you need. One is obviously product, because ultimately you have to be in the middle of that conversation with the table-pounding differentiation to what is the core of what you do. So there's product architecture and that IP. There's team architecture, which is the second bucket. And here we at Sierra spend an inordinate amount of time recruiting and helping you build out the team. I always joke, I joke with my partners that if I ever get fired from Sierra, I know I can feed my family as a headhunter, right? Because it feels like that's my second job in sort of trying to hire a VP of products, a VP of engineering at these early teams. That's the second thing. The third is business architecture, as in what is the way in which you will structure, what is the ACV for the product, what is, how do you move up the product, what is a minimum viable product, what do you charge for it, yada, yada, right? So business architecture. And the final one is financing architecture. So what is it, what are the milestones, who are we going to go to next and knock on the door to get the Series A done, Series B done? Because back to the point I started with, it is critical in this age of noise and the age of social media where everybody can basically raise their hand and be the dishonest company, but sort of FUD the market, that you have a financing strategy to be able to clear the hurdle and become a sustainable company. So what we try to do when we get engaged in projects is think through very deeply about those 4 buckets. And that's where we talk about ourselves, we position ourselves as a firm that come early, stay late. That's what early stage venture is all about. And I think if you stay in a market for 8 to 10 years, you create those billion-dollar outcomes, which I think is why we get out of bed every day. So I think that's the way I would think about the financing, the market, and kind of what you want to go after.
Just stay with you for a minute. One of the things that has been very surprising to me coming back to this conference is how much the attendance has grown, particularly over the last year. So we're definitely in a big data bubble right now. 2,700 people here and companies having booths and all of that. That's not how we think of a technical conference. So are you seeing this in the deal flow that you have in terms of big data? Do you see that as being different? Say, do you see a noticeable difference in big data deal flow versus other areas where you're looking to invest, or you're looking where entrepreneurs are coming to you asking for your investment?
I think Greg had made the point earlier that every deal that comes in has AI in it, and either on page 1 or on page 3, right? It's some notion of, hey, if you're a business application, we're powered by AI. For AI only in a particular market, that's what we do. So I think it is definitely at way beyond a buzz level, and so we look past it and go right to the math and right to the science to figure out Does the team have the right DNA? Are they solving a hard problem? Do they have domain pain, either because of what they did or because of the time they've spent? So I'm a big believer that you don't need to be naturally born in a domain to discover the pain in the domain, right? You just have to be sort of willing enough to spend time in a particular vertical to figure out what the exact problem is, and then build a company and a solution around it. So we find those kind of teams coming to us now.
Great. You know, on the, you know, I just wanted to finish up on the financing strategy piece, because I think you know, it's very, you know, we all sit in the, you know, with a venture capital lens on that ecosystem, and, you know, talk about, you know, the friends and family round, the angel round, the micro VC round, and the pre-seed round, and the C round, and the A round, and the B round, none of which means anything, by the way. You know, there are lots of available sources of capital, and so to me, you know, I'd turn the table around and say what's most important for you all to be thinking as entrepreneurs and potential entrepreneurs is, who do you want to be your partner? And, you know, I think you get to know that person and that firm, and you do references on those people and that firm, you know, at least as much as you would a co-founder. And I think it's also the case that firms have different strategies and approaches. And, you know, it's not that there's one good one and one bad one. It's that you should understand what they do and how they work and what you're going to get. And so, you know, to me, the notion that says, look, it's okay if you take a seed round with 4 different investors with $500,000 each. Just don't expect anyone to help very much, right? Because nobody owns very much of the business, and they don't care. And so if that's the way you want to set up your business and your cap table, so you're in control and nobody else is paying that much attention, it's okay. Right? Not my preferred approach, but it's okay, right? If you want somebody who is going to be, you know, a relatively hands-on partner who's going to be doing all of the recruiting for you, for example.
Not until.
Yeah. And, but, you know, then you have to, 1, select someone on that basis, 2, you know, do a financing round so that they own enough so that it fits into their business model. And those are questions that entrepreneurs don't ask often enough. So I just go into that with your eyes open and ask the right questions and do your homework.
I actually wanted to comment on something that's been kind of both an implicit and explicit theme of a couple of the statements here, including in financing strategy, which is this notion that AI and big data as sort of generic, fuzzy terms have reached a peak. I'd say the words have reached a peak. The phrases are peaking in that they're being devalued. The techniques, the expertise, for those of you who are academics, the word praxis is a really good one, haven't reached a peak. The world is still full of shit. There are a lot of gigantic, unsolved problems that are barely amenable to the computational techniques and, to Greg's point about advantage, the data that's been accreted so far. People throw around exabytes as if we can all slap ourselves on the back. There are problems in material science and drug discovery, in simulation of human societies, trying to prevent problems like Syria from erupting ever again, that require yottabytes of information. And we're not there in the technology, hardware, software, networking, attribution, security, validation, access control. None of this exists to deal with the data that we need. To Mark's point, the IoT systems that we need cheaply enough, quickly enough to acquire that data don't exist. The vaunted 5G wireless systems that might, if Verizon's in a good mood, spurt out a gigabit for a second and a half in a crowded metro before lapsing back to the 3GPP minimal bandwidth spec, aren't big enough to wirelessly feed all of the information from all of those sensors. You know, we had a blog post for a company that Intel recently acquired, one that we did with the folks at DFJ, called Nirvana. We're very excited about those guys because their software stack combined with their chip coming out in a couple of months outperforms everything that NVIDIA has boasted about shipping in 2019. That's 1/10,000th of the computational power needed to solve stuff that urgently needs to be addressed in basic human activities. And the title of the blog post was Standing on the Shore. Carl Sagan had this great quote about how we're standing on the shore of the cosmos, like little kids on a beach just dipping our toe into the ocean. We are standing on the shore of what we need to do in AI and big data and everything that goes along with managing those facilities and tools and systems and elements of praxis. So I want to encourage you not to be cynical, to be relentless and optimistic and enthusiastic. Dare I use the word joyous. March off to war, singing a battle hymn. Perform innovation that astonishes people because of its asymptotic exponential nature, because you know what? We need it. It's not overhyped. It's not overbaked. And as somebody who still reads the code of the companies that we invest in and still looks at the chip designs of any, or chip usage and hardware content of any company that we have that's a full stack company, I'm speaking from actual hard data. We're nowhere close. Go do more.
Any questions, guys? Go ahead.
So, I guess I got a mic. So, what would you guys consider? I haven't seen a really big data company yet. Like nothing at the scale of the big ones and so forth. What would you guys consider like a real big and up and coming big data investment that was done already by anyone?
I think you should go to Greg.
So, by the way, I agree with with what Matt said. I do think that AI, machine learning, big data are basically ingredient brands at some level. So they're no longer sufficient to spout the buzzwords. But the notion that says we are still building the stack. I think the thing that makes it really challenging is that the infrastructure technologies have been largely, the newer infrastructure technologies have been in open source. And, the open source business model has a bunch of wonderful benefits, mainly that it's really inexpensive to build upon, but it's much more challenging to build companies around it. Now, the company that that Matt and I are part of, Elation, which I think is so again is basically, you can think of it as the data catalog that helps users find, understand, use, and govern enterprise data assets. And to me, the thing that was so interesting about this one, the first time that I met with them, is having spent years looking at master data management and having come up to the shore of making investments in master data management, none of which worked. So this basic problem that says we have enterprise data, we don't know what it means, we don't know where it all is, we don't know how it's been modified, we don't know how it filters up into reports and analyses that we're looking at, and was one that is a 25-year-old problem. And yet the amount of data that we have has gone up by 3 orders of magnitude during that time, and I think just becomes bigger over time. And so for me, and I think Matt would feel the same way, we have put ourselves on the path of a generation-long problem, of trying to solve a generation-long problem in the context of big data, and now the big data era that we're coming into. Now, the interesting thing, and this is kind of to the, what I'll call the semantic debate that Matt and I have been having up here, which is there is machine learning at the core, right? So it sits at the data pipe and then uses machine learning to try to extract all the data from it that humans are never willing to actually write, to go document their data the way developers don't like documenting their code. But if one called it a machine learning company, I mean, you'd kind of get laughed out of the room. It's just central to solving the business problem that it needs to solve. And so to me, those are examples of what I think are enormous opportunities, and which we'd love to do more of.
Yeah. Actually, okay, I have an example. Sorry. So Usama, you asked about a big data company. So we're the largest investors in a company called Planet Labs, now I guess officially called Planet, which has a constellation of over 120 microsatellites, actually about the size of an umbrella stand in orbit. And the raw data capacity of that constellation as it exists is in excess of an exabyte an hour. So you can imagine there's some interesting compression problems in figuring out what to get down in terms of raw image and hyperspectral data eventually from that constellation, how you build the base stations for it, what you decide to archive, if you want to do time-sensitive change detection, just how much do you have around, what's your granularity of time. They are constantly launching new satellites, so the numbers just start getting crazy. So it goes from exabytes an hour to exabytes a minute to ultimately, if you have enough sensors and enough satellites, because they're now cheap, exabytes a second. And this isn't to ring the bell for one of our companies, it's to say, if in our own portfolio, an interesting and differentiated but single company can present that kind of massive data challenge, the other 3 smart people here and other 30, 40, 50, 100 smart people in venture capital that care about the same stuff that we do have stuff under the waterline, stuff that we don't even know about that's dealing in crippling amounts of data. Just another example, we just recently invested in a company that has the voluntary, all above board data rights to 1 million human being founder population, to a genetically isolated population. Every bit of their proteomics, every bit of their metabiome, every bit of their epigenetics, every bit of their genomics, and is busily working on acquiring and sequencing all of that, including tissue and blood samples that go back 20 years for 1 million people. So that's going to be a big data problem. And again, there are probably 10 people smarter and more perspicacious than I am, by far, who have something even more impressive under the waterline. So to your point, Evangelos, I mean, sorry to reach for another quote, there's an old Paul Simon song called The Boy in the Bubble, and the refrain in the song is, "This is the age of miracles and wonder." And to Tim's point, that's why we get out of bed. We're actually making stuff happen that has real material value to humanity, and we're getting paid to do it. I mean, that's pretty much everybody's childhood fantasy.
Can I give one? I give up. It'll come to you.
That's okay too.
Yeah, so this is I want to just take a very different example, and to Osama's question, I think there isn't a billion-dollar company yet. But the thing to remember, back to the earlier discussion we had, was that data-centric companies that fundamentally live on data and the app stack gets built take a long time to get to that point where you have this geometric sort of growth. And LinkedIn is a great example. There's a presentation on the net. If you look at the growth of LinkedIn in the early days, 2002, 2003, it was literally flatlining. Birds chirping, nothing going on. Till 2008. When they get to the volume of data and the application stack starts looking interesting, it's a runaway success. So that notion of the network effect on the data stack is critical, and that's why it takes time. And a really interesting example of that in our portfolio, in a very sort of non-obvious vertical, which is the reason I wanted to just mention it, is a company called Sika Software. So Sika is in the vertical of, so they are non-insured healthcare. So this would be, your vet, your dentist, and the systems they use for running their practices. So Sika built like the database that all these people use on a daily basis and the application stack on top. The company literally started in Fremont in a garage, was nothing, flatlining for 3 years, and then it started seeing the asymptotic growth because more and more people now has 30,000 businesses that sit on the data stack, and they can't go anywhere. Just like you can't go anywhere, you gotta go and put your resume on LinkedIn. So I think there's a reason that the businesses take a while to grow, and I think patience and kind of keeping that theme and just going for it, I think, is a key point here if you want to build a billion-dollar business.
I patted them on the back because they pitched us all 3 years where they were doing nothing, and we said no. And Tim came in at the right moment, to his credit.
We have 5 minutes, and I have counted 3 questions. Okay, so I'll go first up here, and then I'm coming to you.
At this point, I forgot my question. No. Okay, no. My name is Ingo, founder of Rapid Miners. So I've been raising, I think, three rounds of financing myself. One thing I found mind-blowing, actually, is what I heard also today from some of you panelists here today, is that your industry actually didn't change that much. So you're still looking for the super-class, world-class team with the right DNA, crushing a business problem. And I get it. Of course, the goals stay the same. But did your methods really change? In the last couple of years, always had the feeling like, well, it didn't change that much. How far are you going using machine learning, data science, and other data sources actually to make your investment decisions, maybe to make it a little bit less out of your gut, just looking for those absolutely crushing business model?
A lot.
Tell me about that.
Nope.
Actually,
Secret sauce.
How boring.
yeah.
So thanks for great insights here. And the title of the panel is Big Dreamers, and I buy into the dream. You're saying let's help humanity. There's a lot of things. I opened my own startup, so I definitely believe in let's make the world a better place. But however, with dreams, there's also another thing that comes along. It's called nightmares. So I'm curious to hear, there's some growing concern among some really, really top thinkers in the field, no longer just the crazy people who are saying, we're unleashing all this amazing AI stuff. What's going to happen when it turns sour? And what's going to happen when we build a wonderful AI that's going to do the best paperclips ever and kill all the humans and build a giant paperclip? So, this is Nick Bostrom with this recent book, Superintelligence. And these are no longer the, crazies on the street. So curious to hear your thoughts.
So I was on a panel a couple of years ago, and someone asked, "Are we investing in the singularity?" and I said that you're far more forward thinkers than we are. So when we start investing in the singularity, then you really need to watch out.
Maybe we should invest in AI safety instead.
So there's a lot that's been written on this. You can't predict when you're going to get a hard takeoff in AI capability, but there's actually something that's going on right now where everybody in this room can contribute, which is to opening up even basic black box unsupervised ML that touches human society. So right now we're implementing sentencing systems in courts, we're implementing credit systems to decide who gets access to credit. A lot of the things that people take for granted in a modern Western society are being turned over in large part to AI algorithms that the users don't understand. To me, that's a far bigger problem than my toaster declaring that it's going to turn me into paper clips.
We had a last question.
Thanks.
My name is Richard. I am from a early stage venture investment firm from China. I guess my question is, we see a lot of opportunities, entrepreneurs going after horizontal opportunities with regard to AI or big data. However, given the sensitivity of the big data possessed by the clients or users, there are other opportunities in vertical sectors which goes strictly vertical and get some data, get some big clients paying. The compromise, it's very difficult to compromise. When you go after horizontal opportunities, the short-term revenue or money is challenging. However, when you go vertical, you get short-term revenue contracts. However, the scale will be limited. So I would like to listen to your idea.
I'll take a quick crack at that. I think that, so just to restate the problem, when one takes one of these really interesting machine learning stacks or AI stacks, for example, one can apply them to horizontal problems where you have really big, wide market opportunity, but it's hard to get going and to build enough revenue early on to be successful. And you make the opposite compromise if you go vertical, which is that you can get revenue faster, but it's often, you don't have the same kind of market size, and it's hard to go to be a multi-vertical company, to start in one vertical and go to another. And I think this is the essence of, I think of it as a product management problem. I came out of product management myself. That is when Tim talks about sort of the business architecture, you have to go through that thought process of what I'm always looking for is I'm looking for tip of the spear, right? How do I get started? I want some efficient way to start putting numbers on the board and to demonstrate that what we're doing works, with the opportunity to then go broaden out over time. And that it forces you to make architectural decisions on that basis and to think ahead. It is certainly the case that there are plenty of people, many of them frankly in bigger funds than any of us, who just say, the biggest thing you can do is completely horizontal, take big chunks of money and go at it. And I think, I'll give Matt credit for this with respect to Nirvana. I think we saw many sort of what I'll call machine learning in a box. It's our black box, algorithm, and we're not, we make an API available and people can use it to figure out whatever they want. Those are really, really hard businesses to build. And so, generally what I find for us is tip of the spear, got to be attached to a business problem that you know and can understand, that can be vertical or functional, and that combination of easy entry with option on broader market over time is the way that I prefer to finesse that question.
Thank you very much. Thanks, guys.